So, I owe you an apology. Earlier in 2024, I straight up stopped playing Guild Wars 2. Like, nearly cold turkey, didn't even log in. I'm actually thinking back about all the dailies that I missed in that time. And I recently decided that I would log in, mainly because I saw the Janthier Wilds expansion announcement, and I wanted to see what was going on in game. Also, I like Dragon Bash. Dragon Bash is like my favorite seasonal event. And then something kind of clicked with me. But first, here's why I stopped playing Guild Wars 2 for nearly 6 months. So the first major reason that I really needed to stop playing Guild Wars 2 and just take a step back was because I was burnt out. Guys, I was burnt out to hell. For context, that was really the only game that I was playing. That was the only game that I really had time to sit down and play. And then on top of that, as far as a creator standpoint, I was putting out a video like nearly every 3 days. Now, that doesn't sound like it's that difficult. However, when I only have, 3 to 5 hours of free time that I can actually sit down and do this, which is supposed to be a fun hobby, it ended up becoming incredibly stressful. And I found myself not enjoying the process like I had used to. And the only time that I was actually just playing the game just to have fun and not log in with a specific purpose to create a video was usually during my streams. And that was only streaming once a week. And to me, that wasn't enough for me to still be interested into the game without viewing it as work. I was on essentially a treadmill of let's just get this next video out. Let's get this focus on what content needs to be done. Let's just do that, and then that's it. I didn't allot myself any other time for anything else, really, just that piece of content. And I felt like that was an unhealthy relationship that I was having with Guild Wars 2 and even my creative career here. It was just straight up work. It wasn't fun. And then on top of that, I actually felt like I was spamming my community too much because I was on this regimen of a video every 3 days. I feel like the quality of the content that I was putting out, I felt personally like was deteriorating. And I didn't like that relationship that I was forming, not only between myself in the game, but then myself in the community that I had built up. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some series that I really enjoyed building. There were some series that I really enjoyed creating. However, it got to the point where I was putting myself under an unreasonable amount of pressure, all with the goal of me becoming a full-time content creator. It really wasn't that much fun, and I kind of burnt out hard on that. Now, again, that is the goal, is to do this as a full-time job and have this as my career, which I'm still very much working towards. However, I still want to be able to enjoy what I'm doing. I still want to actually sit down and just play video games without the thought, without the fear of, am I wasting time that I could be putting out more content? And I think that's something that I had to step away and say, you know what? I just got to give it time. The second, and this was kind of a minor reason, I really wasn't that big of a fan of Secrets of the Obscure. Out of all the expansions that Guild Wars 2 has put out, Secrets of the Obscure was probably my least favorite. I mean, when it initially was announced and when it launched, I had really high hopes, but I mean, I felt like the story was pretty short. The rift system was kind of fast and overly repetitive. I didn't find as much enjoyment in it as I had once previous with either expansions like Path of Fire, which I loved, or heck, even the Living World Season 4. That was absolutely my favorite. Great storytelling, great environments. There was just, it was really well done. Now, I know that there is some sentiment in the community that Secrets of the Obscure wasn't their favorite. It wasn't the best expansion that has ever come out, but it was something new. They tried something new, so I can't necessarily fault ArenaNet there. And while Secrets of the Obscure could be comparative in size, we'll say maybe, to other, we'll say full-fledged expansions, it felt segmented and so much smaller because of the time gating between releases. Like, it isn't like the End of Dragons expansion where you have access to everything all at once and you're able to just play through and go through there. Secrets of the Obscure was broken down into these sections and it was okay. They were almost isolated stories, which was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Like, I did actually really like the story. I like the different take on the game, but it just wasn't enough for me to be like, wow, this is so cool. Also, something that I personally didn't like was that we transitioned from being quote unquote the commander to a wayfinder or the wayfinder. And I know that that's kind of like, again, this step in a new direction, let's try something new. It didn't really stick for me. Like, I fought dragons and, gods and things like that, and this felt like a different style that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of. And again, this is just me being nitpicky. Let me just say that. It's me being nitpicky. One thing that I've talked about, especially in my Guild Wars 2 time, as well as being just a content creator in general, is that I really need to have a better idea of perspective. And I've talked about this a number of times, that really my MMO experience was only limited to essentially World of Warcraft. That was the game that I played the hell out of. That was, I put years and years into that game. And I really only played Guild Wars 2 otherwise. So I didn't really have too many outside experiences. And I think that was something that I needed to do on my own. I needed to make that time to go and play other games and other MMOs. And I'm talking, I played Lord of the Rings Online, and I tried that game out, and that was fun. I did Path of Exile, which isn't really considered an MMO, but it's a game that I never played. And I loved it, had a lot of fun. Got to fly out to LA to try out Path of Exile 2. That was awesome. And now I'm in the throes of playing Final Fantasy XIV. And I'm loving it. I'm having this great time outside of Guild Wars 2. This one aspect incredibly helped me out with my burnout. And my burnout was that I was focusing solely on Guild Wars 2. I didn't expand my horizons. I didn't add in these extra perspectives of other MMOs that could be either equal to or better. So that when I come back to Guild Wars 2, I can look at it a little bit more objectively and say, this was good. Or, this wasn't as good. And again, I don't know if I was still so solely focused on Guild Wars 2 that I would have ever stepped outside of my comfort zone and played a game like Final Fantasy XIV, because I had pre-misconceptions about it, and I made a video about that where I talked about the things that I got wrong about the game. Also, big shout out to Galactic for sticking into it and making me try this other game. It's great. All in all, I still consider Guild Wars 2 to be a fantastic game, and it's one game that it's one of my favorites, absolutely. However, I needed to be able to step back and look at it from a more discerning eye by having experiences other than this one little isolated tunnel that I was living in. And lastly, I think this is probably one of the bigger reasons, probably right up there with burnout being my biggest reason, is that I wasn't playing the game properly. Now, I'm not saying I was like the worst elementalist in the world. I was all right. I wasn't the best, but it's more so that I wasn't taking the game for what it is supposed to be. And this game is supposed to be very casual friendly. This is supposed to be one of those MMOs that you can pick up and put down whenever you need to. Now, the problem that I had is that, again, I had that hyperfixation, and I wasn't taking breaks from the game and trying other things and then coming back. Playing the game as it should be. That's one of the features of Guild Wars 2 that I've highlighted in a number of videos, is that it's casual friendly. You can come back and never miss any of your progress. You're right where you were, and you don't fall behind either to power creep or all these other various features that you might see in other MMOs. Like, I bring up the example of shortly before I decided to step away from Guild Wars 2 is that I completed Vision, the legendary trinket from Living World Season 4. And immediately, like the next week, I was already focusing on my next grinding target. Like, what was I going to work on next? And that, to me, really wasn't all that exciting. It took all the wind out of the sail, and it's like, yep, now we're on to the next one. Here's some more work to do. And I didn't necessarily appreciate that, not only to me, but just even like my own time. It was very, very difficult for me to see that this was the way that the game was meant to be. Like, yeah, I feel that with Guild Wars 2, you're supposed to be able to dip in and out whenever you need to, play the game, have some fun, and then come back a little bit later. I feel like that's how the game should be played at least. But to me, that was something that I needed to do. I needed to step away because that's how the game is meant to be played. Now, to be sure, Guild Wars 2 is, again, you buy once and you're basically able to play as many hours as you want, and then you can come back to and from whenever you need to. And seeing that game, that always gave Guild Wars 2, in my mind, a lot more value than, say, for example, Final Fantasy, where you do have to pay for a subscription. Now, currently, their free trial is incredibly robust. It's most of the game. You don't have to pay until, like, the second to the last expansion release. It's ridiculous. But having said that, I understand that these games are meant to be a little bit grindy, and they are meant to be, putting all this time into it and do what you need to. And I think I was just looking at it as essentially work orders. This is what I got to do next. This is what I got to do next. And that's one thing that I've actually really appreciated about Final Fantasy, and then even creating videos about the game, is that all I have to do is just log in, follow the story, and you know, kind of like talk about what I'm doing, and it works. I enjoy it. I enjoy putting the videos together. And that was something that I really needed to do. I needed to play Guild Wars 2 right, which was, you got to take a break every now and then, and you should. There's plenty of great games out there. So I will say the biggest thing that changed when I logged in the other day to Guild Wars 2 is that I realized that I didn't have to choose. I didn't have to choose which MMO I was going to be playing primarily. I didn't have to pick one over the other and then completely isolate myself. I think that was a mistake that I made, is that I needed to view the games the way that they should be. Now, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy is a great game, and it's one that I continue to play, and I will be playing on stream and throughout. However, what I needed to do with Guild Wars 2 is not completely abstain from playing the game, but logging in from time to time, trying the game out, you know, doing some different things, maybe find a funky build that I want to talk about, or, you know, things like that, things that actually make me enjoy the game that much more. I needed to be able to do that, and I think that's something important that I was not doing. So what changed for me is when I logged in, I realized what I kind of already knew all along, is that the game is meant to be that, hey, I'm here when you need me, which is, that was stunning for me. Now, where do we go from here? Well, honestly, I've been loving playing Final Fantasy XIV on stream. I love the story. I love the combat. I'm really, really enjoying all of these different things that the game brings. Epic clashes, highs, lows, it's all over the place. And I've only really scratched the surface of the game. I'm only in the first expansion. I'm only in Heavensward, and I've barely touched anything in there. Having said that, I am going to come back to making Guild Wars 2 videos. Updates on the various ongoings with ArenaNet and the balance patches, maybe talk about some fun builds that I like, point of view, opinion videos, things like that. I am going to be coming back and making that type of stuff here for this game, because I still love this game, and I still want to play it. To be honest, I really miss the drink coffee emote. So I think what I'm going to start doing is play through the rest of the story, and of course when John Thier Wilds comes out, I'm going to be playing that as well. All in all, I think that's going to be the best for not only my channel, but then also for me, is having a mix of both Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy. And honestly, I really think that will help me out from burning out way too much or way too fast. I just want to say I thank you for all of you who have been patient with me, who have been watching along for this journey that I've been taking right before your eyes. And I look forward to the future. As a reminder, I do stream Mondays and Fridays at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Currently, I'm streaming through Final Fantasy XIV. You might pop in, catch a dad joke, see me there. As I mentioned, I am currently going through Heavensward, the first expansion for the base Final Fantasy XIV game. And just recently, Guild Wars 2 did announce their next expansion, which is John Thier Wilds. I covered the whole thing right here. You can click that video. That's going to take you right to it. As always, stay caffeinated, folks.